In this portion, we're looking at mortgages. Now, there are so many elements of mortgages that we could talk about. There are definitely some fees on the front end. There are realtor fees on the back end when you are selling. There are all kinds of things that go into this. We're going to look at some of the more basic financial elements, kind of the big hitting elements. So we're going to look at things like monthly payments. What do you pay in total? How much of that is interest? All of that good stuff. Well, mostly good stuff. So we're going to start with this example. Jackie has a 30-year mortgage. 30 is a very standard length for mortgages. You will also oftentimes see 15-year mortgages, and then you have other lengths that are less common, but 30 is probably the most common. The mortgage is for $400,000, which basically means in this case, we're not looking at things like making a down payment, which is a big lump sum you make at the beginning to cut down on the cost of the home. So this is basically, we're going to assume either the home itself costs $400,000 or this number accounts for any down payment or other fees that are going on at the front end. So basically the mortgage is for this amount, and we have an APR of 3.4%. Keep in mind, if we are not told about the number of compounds, like any of this financial stuff, we're going to assume that this is going to compound monthly. That's pretty standard practice. So we want to know a few things. What is Jackie's monthly payment? What is Jackie's total payment over the 30 years? How much did you pay in total? And how much of that went to interest? So let's take a look at a template. So again, I created this for us in hopes of making things pretty easy for us. So it looks something like this. We've got mortgage payments, right? And then we have only two elements of this, which is solving for the monthly payment. So this is a case where we know all of the facts. We know the cost of the home and whether we've made a down payment, that kind of thing. And we want to know basically the three things we just asked for. What's the regular payment, the monthly payment? How much do we end up paying in total if we stay the whole time, which is rare in the case of a 30-year mortgage, but definitely happens. And how much interest is paid. Now, because it's rare that we stay the whole time, it's probably a little bit of more interest to us to say, well, what if I leave after a certain period of time? So that's going to be the second part of this, figuring out our ending balance. And so we're going to say, how much do we still owe after a certain period of time? And we have some other interesting facts there. So we'll kind of get to that in a moment. But let's look at the example we have here. So the cost of the home was $400,000. Basically, this is saying, what is your mortgage for? The reason I'm saying cost of the home is because we're incorporating whether or not there is a down payment. Now, in this situation, there is not, or at least we're not told about one. Okay. And then let's go back over here. Let me make sure that we've got our APR. Okay, so this is 3.4%. And again, it's a 30-year mortgage. So we're going to do, again, like we've done with every single one of these templates, we can either do 3.4. Make sure you include the percent symbol. I can't emphasize that enough. Everything's going to get totally jacked up if we don't have that. So 3.4%, or you could just type in 0.034. All right, mortgage term in years. So the term is again, just a length. So this is 30. And like we've had before, these parts that we're not filling in, these parts that are not in yellow, are telling us, okay, well, how many total compounds and therefore how many payments, since we're monthly payments and monthly compounds in this situation? Well, it's 360, 30 years times 12. Here's the interest rate, R over 12 per month that we are paying. So our regular monthly payment on this home is $1,773 and 92 cents. That's going to be the answer to part A. What is Jackie's monthly payment? How much do we pay in total, including the down payment is in here. Now, this, again, our down payment was 0, but in future situations, we're going to have something that is non-zero. So in total, we paid for this home $638,600, right, with some extra change in there. And we look at this and we go, hey, wait a minute. This house is a $400,000 house, and I paid almost $639,000 for it, right? That seems ridiculous. This is the flip side of our investments, right? On our investments, we said, hey, having compound interest is a great thing. It builds up, it builds up. Well, when you're paying a loan, it's the other way around, right? That's working against you. You have this huge chunk of money that even with a very small percent, right? This is nothing compared to credit cards. 3.4% it feels like nothing. But that ends up being a huge amount when we say, okay, yeah, it's based off of 400,000, right? So this monthly payment that we're making really adds up over time. So we end up paying this much. And how much of that is interest? Well, really all we're doing, I'll kind of clue us in here on the interest paid. It's basically just saying take your total payment, the $638 and change, subtract the cost of the home, and that's your interest, right? So we end up paying over 50% of the cost of the home, right? 200,000 would be half of the cost. We pay more than that just in interest. And now here's the crazy part of it. The majority of that interest gets paid on the front end. So your early payment, so every month you're going to pay the same. You pay this $17.73.92, right? But the early payments are way, way, way interest heavy. You are not really building up equity. You're not really getting any value out of the house. You're basically just saying thank you to the bank for giving you the loan in order to buy that house. So those early payments are super killer. Now this works in the bank's favor because they know you're probably not even going to stay the whole 30 years. So at the end, where all those payments are mostly going into actually the cost of the home and there's not much interest, well, you've probably moved by then. So this is definitely working to their benefit at the front end where you're just paying a huge amount of interest. All right. But of course, there's not much of an alternative. I don't know many people who just have $400,000 lying around. And if they do, they probably don't just want a $400,000 house, right? You kind of always size up with where your money is. So this, again, this scenario is kind of unfortunate, but also, right, most people tend to just say, what is my regular monthly payment? And that's a dangerous game to play to some extent, right? You do want to make sure you can match that, but you want to probably think about, can I either get something a little less expensive or can I pay a little bit more in my regular payments? And we'll look at those scenarios as well. Okay, so we could pull those values over. I don't really need to do that. They're exactly in order from the table. So let's expand on this. So continuing from that previous example, suppose Jackie only stays in the home for 8 years, right? 8 years is a totally reasonable amount of time. So let's say, well, how much equity has Jackie built in this time? Equity is the amount of money that has actually gone to the cost of the home, right? So your payment, let's bring that payment back up, right? That's $17.73.92. Some of it goes to interest and some of it goes to actually paying down the $400,000 you owe. So anything that actually goes toward paying this $400,000, that's equity you've built in the home. That's basically like, hey, that's the amount that you own in the house, right? When you get this mortgage, the bank owns it, right? You're basically buying it slowly from the bank. That's kind of the reality, the sad reality of the situation, but that's what it is. Okay, so let's look at our second part of the template here. So we know that this home was $400,000. We know we did not make a down payment, or if we did, it's already folded in here. The payment that we've been making, well, let's just steal that from up here, right? It's $17.73.92. Okay, our interest rate was 3.4%. Again, don't forget the percent symbol. I just want to show you something. Let's suppose we just say, well, what if I verified my answer up here? What if I changed this to 30? I should have an ending balance of 0, but I have a $3 balance. Well, okay, that's just a product of how this regular payment was rounded. So, the reality is it's 1773.92467, right? Some kind of decimal here, so that we rounded down. Probably a lot of times this would round up maybe to 93 cents, and you would have just a slight negative balance at the end. But as long as this number is close to 0 when we look at the full term, then it should be fine. And so we go, okay, cool. We don't really care about 30 years. We're not staying the whole time. We're staying for 8 years, right? Very reasonable amount of time. So we have made 96 payments. And so we go, great. During this time, we got a bunch of stuff going on down here. So what has happened? Well, we paid a total during that time of about $170,000. That's how much we paid. But remember, that's not all going against the value of the house. A lot of that is interest. In fact, almost $100,000 of that, more than half of it, goes to interest. All right, again, the front end, so much of your payment goes to interest. So keep that in mind. Okay, so how much equity have we built? So of the $170,000 that we paid, actually only about $70,000 of it went toward the cost of the home. So we still owe at that point $330,000 on our loan. So we have chunked down $70,000, and so that part is how much we actually owe of the home, $70,000. And again, we've just sort of flushed $100,000 down the drain, unfortunately. Right. So that's what we answer here. The equity would be that $70,000. How much interest did she pay during that time would be the $100,000. Right. So when you're reading these, just kind of be careful. I try to make it pretty clear over here what's happening. Interest, and really I can take out fees. It's not really so much fees that we're accounting for there. So interest paid, right? Equity built, and these are again including the down payments. I try to make that clear as well. Okay. So the Killians are excited to buy a $320,000 home with a 15-year mortgage from their local credit union, which is offering them a great rate of 2.97%. So we're going to say, great, let's go back up here, $320,000. We have a 15-year mortgage, 2.97% for our APR. And in this case, they don't make any early payments. It doesn't sound like they made a down payment either. You are allowed to pay more than the monthly amount each month. You can chunk down faster. Okay, how much will they end up paying for the house in total? So we put all of our pieces in here. We just say, which of these values do I want? Well, how much did we pay in total? They paid close to $400,000, right? So that's not bad. And a big part of that is because, one, they got a really nice APR. 2.97 is nice. That's you would like to land in that 3% range if possible. The mortgage term is shorter. Usually shorter term loans, your monthly payment's a little bigger, $2,200, but you're not paying as much in interest. That interest isn't being dragged out. You're basically chunking into the equity a little faster. Okay. Now, let's suppose in that previous example, the Killians made a $20,000 down payment, but everything else stays the same. So we're going to say, okay, down payment, I'm just changing this to $20,000, but all the other pieces are staying the same. So we notice that the monthly payment went from $2,200 down to $2,067. That's because our starting amount was lower. We end up paying, and let me take this back out just so we see. So zero. Total paid was about $397. If I put in that down payment, it goes down to about $392. So basically, because the loan is a smaller amount to start, we end up paying less interest, less in total for this thing, and less every month. So how much will they pay for the home now? Again, just make sure you're interpreting the right amount. That would be the total paid. So now it's $392 and some change. Great. All right, and then I just wanted to mention one other thing. Again, there are so many aspects of mortgages, things like the fact that we pay so much interest at the front end and so little at the back end, the fact that you can have these different terms of loans. Here's another one, ARMS. ARMS stands for adjustable rate mortgage. That means you can have a very, very nice fixed rate for a certain period of time. So I gave us an example, a 7-1 ARM. That means the first 7 years of the mortgage, you have a fixed rate. Usually it's pretty nice and low. And then after that, your rate is going to change every year, every 1 year. And so that's just kind of wherever the market is. So this could really help you, or this could really hurt you. It just depends. But of course, if you're only planning on staying in the home for 5, 6, 7 years, and you don't even have to worry about that fluctuation, then hey, an ARM might be the way to go. That's actually something I had done in the past, and it worked really well in my favor, because you can end up getting, again, a really nice interest rate and paying less in interest. Okay, so these are just, again, kind of the bigger elements of loans, but there's of mortgages. There's so much more to this stuff. So if you have more questions, definitely reach out to me, and we can definitely talk about that.